Hidden reasons why Israel wants control of Northern Gaza. Zionist state is obsessed with this part of the region and clearly desires to occupy more of Palestine via ethnic cleansing. By Isaac Karim Hollow Bullet, the 31st of October 24. On the 4th of October 2024, the very month we are in right now, the planes of the occupation were instructed to clear the ground to allow for the arrival of the 162nd Division that was coming from Rafah into Jabalia. At Fajr the next day, this battalion, consisting of 200 tanks and 15,000 soldiers, came to Jabalia, which is roughly the size of a single square kilometer. For reference, this is the same battalion that was deployed in the town of Suez in 1973. Escalating tactics to force displacement. This brutal battalion besieged Jabalia from 3 directions, but left a route into the south of Gaza open with the intention of forcing the inhabitants of northern Gaza into seeking refuge in the south. The occupation has been desperate for this to happen throughout the war and has already carried out this same tactic several times. However, what has happened to make this occasion different? Imagine a drowning person who is moments away from taking their last breath, when suddenly they find a slight reprieve, and the moment they take a breath, even before that breath is complete, they begin to drown again. This second siege on Jabalia is undoubtedly more intense than any of the previous ones. Islam Badr, a reporter in Jabalia, says, "The number of residents who have stayed in Jabalia is more than the number of residents who stayed in Jabalia earlier in the year in May, and earlier still in November and December of last year." This is despite the fact that the IDF activity in the area is much more intense and brutal than in previous times. Why, then, are the residents staying put this time around? There is no safe haven whatsoever. To summarize, they see no benefit in leaving. The occupation has proved there are no safe places in Gaza. Any and everything has been bombed indiscriminately, from hospitals to schools. The occupation left a route open for the residents in northern Gaza to move to the south, but the people have been disabused of the notion that there is anywhere safe in the whole of Gaza. In fact, in previous similar situations, the occupation has used migrating residents as an opportunity to murder people whilst they are easy targets. The people who sought refuge away from the north in the past have been forced to move their tents over 10 times in the pursuit of any ground where they can pitch their tents. The so-called general's plan. After the occupation realized that the people no longer believed its lies and invitations, it closed off even that southern route and intensified its genocidal activity by continuing its bloodthirsty campaign and fully blocking all aid from entry. Literally, anything that moves in Jabalia is being targeted. No ambulances, no burials, no aid. Nothing but starvation and genocidal barbarity. On top of this, the monsters in the IDF are blowing up houses on their whims, innovating techniques that Shaitan would be proud of, sending autonomously controlled tanks loaded with explosives into housing areas and destroying en masse. In September, a group of officers in the reservist ranks of the IDF presented to their seniors what they called the general's plan. This plan was aimed at a forced displacement of Palestinians living in the north of Gaza and turning it into a military base. This so-called general's plan was the brainchild of a retired major general reservist by the name of Giora Island. He says, the Israeli strategy claimed that only military pressure would bring the desired results. Today, 10 months or more since October 7, it is safe to say that this strategy has failed. Wars in the 21st century need to resort to something else. Of greater importance are the residents. Whoever controls the residents will be victorious in war. They would give people a week to get out, and anyone who remained beyond that would either surrender or be killed. That way, the Gaza Strip would become smaller, and this would put more pressure on the Palestinians and the resistance. This would also create a buffer zone between Gaza and the occupied settlements beyond the Gaza Strip. This way, it would ensure security for the Israeli settlements and also hope to prevent any reoccurrence of the 7th of October. Fortitude of residents of Jabalia. This is why we see that the main objective for Israel in Jabalia is to target civilians. The occupation believes that if they break down this steadfastness of the resistance, then it will be much easier to break down the rest of the Palestinian resistance. Speaking before the assassination of Yahya Sinwar, Island continued, "What Sinwar is concerned about is the land and the dignity of the people. With this plan, we can take away both. This is why, when it's stated that the objectives of Israel in Gaza are not militaristic, we can see the truth behind that." The plan was, of course, attractive to Netanyahu, who was further of the opinion that victory in Gaza would be achieved through the prevention of aid coming in. To force a mass migration from the north of Gaza has been tried several times over the course of this war and has not been successful due to the patience and steadfastness of the civilians there. This latest attempt to focus on just a part of the north, Jabalia, is a more focused target, and yet it is still a thorn in the side of the maniacal IDF. Implications for the genocide. So why hasn't the Israeli army publicly announced this above-mentioned plan? It is because they are not the only ones operating in the north. Despite the horrific atrocities it is committing, it is clearly astounded that there is an intensive response from the resistance. And despite announcing several times that they have defeated the resistance in the north, they are then proved fantastically wrong as the resistance records great successes against them. As the occupation haven't announced this plan publicly, it is evidently because its mounting losses are forcing it to maintain a plan to backtrack. They have to be able to save face if they are forced to retreat. Source: Islam 21c.